If you've been keeping up with Doom: The Dark Ages like I have, its release has been met with quite a bit of confusing tales of controversy meets success. I should probably state right away, in none of my Doom videos do I claim that this game or any other Doom game is bad at all. I love Doom. I found Dark Ages to be very fun. If anything, I didn't even want the game to end when I was playing it. I just wish there was more to do in it. And all I hope to convey in this video is that I'm worried about Doom and really all single player premium games of this nature in the future. Because as you'll see from all the information that I'll reveal here in this video, it all just feels like a hollow victory. And that kind of scares me because I want more games like Dark Ages. I love me those premium 20 to 30 hour games that just cut the fat and just give me the meal that I am yearning for these days. But if they're not profitable, what happens in the future? Well, let's dive into it. As seen here from Checkpoint Gaming, Doom: The Dark Ages declared the biggest launch in id Software's history. This sounds amazing on paper. Hell yeah, dude. Dark Ages did well, right? It smashed all the records and made all the money and then some. As Bethesda said here via Twitter, where they confirmed that Dark Ages hit 3 million players and declared, "Thank you for making Doom: The Dark Ages the biggest launch in id Software's history, 7 times faster to 3 million players than Doom Eternal." But people were quick to notice that they said players and not really sales. Yeah, here we go again. Am I right? The problem is that we've seen this tactic used in the past before already, a lot of times, where they declare that players and not sales numbers is just coded language used by publishers to stifle the sting of the actual reality that is brewing beneath all of this. Of course, 10 years ago, the idea of a Game Pass never really existed, so only the units sold could be announced as a milestone. And as we know these days, games are more expensive than ever before to both make and buy too, especially later this fall when games will now be $80 or $90 American a pop. So naturally, as these things become more expensive to both make and buy, they kind of do need to make more money. But the reality is that there's only a finite amount of players that are out there, and every game is still fighting like hell for your viewership, your playtime, and your engagement all of the time. And with Dark Ages, it's a single player game. Thank God for that, by the way. I really enjoyed the game a lot. I want more Doom. I actually even went back after beating Dark Ages and I replayed Doom 2016. I'm actually really close to the Platinum Trophy for that game now as well, as I went back and I'm now in the last level of Doom 2016. And now, having pretty much replayed the entire game to completion again pretty much, man, do I love these sorts of games. Like, dude, it's so much fun. There is no fat there. It's all meat and potato style gaming. That's what I want. And there's something pure and visceral when you play a Doom game, and I want nothing but more games of this caliber to exist in the future. But as I replayed Doom 2016, I kept wondering to myself, while this game is pretty much like a 9 or like a 9.5 out of 10 for me, especially when I compare it to games these days, if Doom 2016 were to release as it is right now as a new game, let's just pretend that the rest doesn't exist yet, would Doom 2016 as it is be successful in this landscape of gaming for $70 or even $80 or maybe even $90 American? Sadly, I don't think so. And I think that's what scares me the most, which is that in order for these games to exist in any capacity, they need to be spun in this way to make the game seem more successful. Because here, let me show you guys something. Here's game journalist Christopher Drink confirming what he's heard from sources close to the story. He said via Twitter, over 2 million of which are on Xbox according to Ampere, power of Game Pass. I did expect it to do a bit better after the buzz out of last year's Xbox event, but that's probably just my expectations being too high. So Christopher Drink confirms from what he's heard from people closely tied to this, who actually know the numbers behind the scenes, that of these 3 million players of Dark Ages, that about 2 million of those are on Game Pass alone. That might sound amazing to some, but well, let's look into that now. Let's break it down this way, okay? The average cost of Game Pass is $12 before taxes American, and Dark Ages reached 2 million players on Game Pass. Obviously, there's different tiers of Game Pass, and some people played it maybe for free via some Game Pass coupon with their new PC they bought or Xbox or whatever other promo. But let's just simplify it, okay, for this case. If we take $70 and divide it by 12, we get 5.83. So that means for every 5 or 6-ish players who pay for Game Pass, I guess you could equate them to one single copy sold of Doom Dark Ages. Again, not the best metric I know, but it's what we got to work with. Then if we divide that 2 million by 5.83, we get 343,000 2,053, meaning that's 2 million players on Game Pass paying to play Dark Ages, although not just that game, of course, that price is spread across hundreds of other titles. But this means that those 2 million players equal roughly 343,000 paid players who played the game money-wise spent before tax. That also means that the other 1 million of that 3 million is also split then between the PC players and the PlayStation ones who bought and played the game. I, of course, am one of them. Which means if we actually add this all up for paid players, roughly it means that Dark Ages achieved 1.34 million paid players somewhat, and not really, but somewhat, in its debut release. Again, I know, not a perfect number, lots of little fixes here or there with taxes and whatnot, but it's what we got to work with, okay? So based on what I could find online, Doom 2016 sold roughly 500,000 copies on both PC and console by the end of its debut month. And we know that based on articles like this one from back in 2020, as seen here, that Doom Eternal did double what 2016 did in its opening week. So this means that Eternal sold somewhere in the 1 million plus mark in its opening week and then some. We know that Eternal made a lot of money for id Software, about $450 million in revenue within its first 9 months of sale. But again, those two games came out in a very different time period than now, so hearing that Dark Ages, according to Christopher Dring, that journalist I mentioned and more, that it only achieved roughly 1 million in sales across PC and PlayStation, while 2 million of that was from Game Pass alone, it's a textbook example of trying to spin the story in a way to make it seem better than it actually is. And by the way, this is not me trying to form some gotcha against Doom at all. Again, need I repeat it, I love Doom, I want more games like this. I'm mostly just worried that if this is how companies need to spin things to look healthy, we are in big trouble, fellas. As this one Twitter user compiled where they compared Final Fantasy XVI, Hi-Fi Rush, and Dark Ages all within their 1 week performances. And that's a good comparison, actually, and proves how cooked we are in this industry in the future. You see, Hi-Fi Rush reached 3 million players on Game Pass and PC. At the time when it released, it was not available on PlayStation yet. Regardless, the game did numbers similar to Dark Ages. It was touted a success. Look how many players Hi-Fi Rush reached. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that great? Until, as we all know, right after Hi-Fi Rush came out, Microsoft then closed down their developer Tango Gameworks and then laid off everyone, citing the studio wasn't able to make enough profit to justify their continued operations under Microsoft's umbrella. This was a big deal because how could this happen? They reached 3 million players. You said that was good. You showed it. You praised it and celebrated it. But the reality was what? It was a flop? How could that be? Thankfully, Tango did get saved by another company, and the majority of its staff was saved and brought back under that name, just not under Microsoft, obviously. But what happened to Tango was very rare. Most studios that closed down never really reopened, seemingly months later under new ownership with most of the staff intact. The sad reality is that most of the time it's the opposite and everyone just kind of disperses wherever they go. Then we can look at Final Fantasy XVI. Amazing game, dude. I love it. One of my favorite games of this generation, bar none. I love that game so much. And it sold 3 million copies in 3 days on PlayStation 5 alone, which it was console exclusive until it came to PC a year later. And that was copies sold, by the way. 16 was not on PS Plus or something else. It sold those copies. It reached more players on PS5 alone as paid than Dark Ages did on PS5, PC, and Xbox, with Game Pass helping it 66% of its total player base too. 16 was an achievement, alright? An amazing big budget AAA game that pushed the boundaries of graphics. A true showpiece for the PlayStation 5, so it did well, right? Well, actually, as you can see right here, Square Enix Final Fantasy XVI didn't meet high-end expectations, share prices fall. Yeah, 16 didn't meet the expectations of Square Enix, even at 3 million units sold, not players, in 3 days of release. That still wasn't enough. And 16 not doing as well is actually one of my biggest disappointments of this entire generation of gaming, because again, I love that game. Seriously, if you haven't played it, you should play it. It's amazing. It's such a great game, dude. But circling back to Doom now, this is what I mean. If Final Fantasy XVI couldn't become profitable for Square Enix, if Hi-Fi Rush reaching the same number of players as Dark Ages did was not enough and ended up closing down that studio, where the hell is the industry going to go in the future then? This just feels like to me that none of these games, their budgets or anything, are really sustainable anymore. Everything is completely out of whack now. Even Borderlands 4, which I recently covered on the channel. Randy Pitchford, that's the CEO, caused all kinds of problems for that game recently, but he did say during a speech at PAX East that Borderlands 4 has double the budget of Borderlands 3. Why does it need that much of a budget? As seen here from Jason Schreier and Insider Gaming, Borderlands 3 costed somewhere near $140 million to develop, which means that Borderlands 4 is sitting close to somewhere like like 300 million or so, and that's before advertising costs, mind you. That will just balloon it even further. So okay, let's do some math again. If Borderlands 4 costed $300 million and each copy digitally is $80, and for simplicity's sake before taxes, it means that Borderlands 4 needs to roughly sell 3.75 million copies to recoup its cost of development alone, which I'll be honest, I think it will likely hit that, since Borderlands 3, as seen here, hit 5 million units sold in 1 week of release. But now things are more expensive, and with that controversy that happened with Randy and all that, who knows now. But with Dark Ages, it makes me really worried, because unlike Borderlands 4, which has co-op and endgame content and roadmaps aplenty, I'm sure, and all the planned expansions and whatever, Dark Ages is a single-player premium shooter adventure game, and that's it. I'm sure maybe Dark Ages will get an expansion at some point like Eternal did too, or at least I hope so, but generally speaking, what's on offer here from id Software is not really enough for the majority of people to buy in. Me, sure, others, maybe not. And it's actually insane that it only sold roughly 1 million units across all of PlayStation and PC combined. You gotta be kidding me. But again, the industry's a lot different now. Everything is so expensive these days. People have different spending habits, and like I said in other videos, the majority of games doing the best are not the ones being sold at full premium price points anymore. The industry might be thinking that they have a cheap player problem on their hands. Why aren't the consumers consuming the content we make for them to buy at the same level anymore? But the truth is that it's actually the other way around. These studios and publishers, they have a spending and budget problem, and because of their massive bloated price points to make these games a reality, the return on investment has to be pretty much insane to justify their ludicrous spending habits. But the narrative is just starting to fall apart. Even GameSpot admits it with their article titled "Doom the Dark Ages hits 3 million players right away," and the majority of them are on Game Pass apparently. Oh boy, the shilling of saying actually this is a success is no longer a feasible way of reporting things, I guess. Because they know that this over-expending of resources and money versus returns on investments are completely and utterly paralyzing the future of the industry. And yet what the industry needs is not more of these super expensive games, but more stuff that is reasonably priced and not crunching devs to make it a reality. Claire Obscura, the Oblivion Remaster, Helldivers 2 even, all $50 games American, all big success stories in their own rights. If all 3 of those games launched at $70, they would have less than half their player base and then some, I guarantee it. Never mind 80 or 90, my god. And this new meta of relying on player engagement over sales is just proving how absolutely cooked everything is. Again, I am not making this video to hate on Dark Ages. I really like the game, guys, despite what people might say on Twitter. I'm just worried that this trajectory is gonna destroy the future prospects of gaming like this to continue existing. You know things are bad when even IGN can't spin and lie about a story. Look at their article, Doom the Dark Ages, the biggest launch in its history, but no sales figure yet. Exactly, no sales figures, because it's not as high as Eternal, unfortunately. And how could this be anyway? Everything is too expensive. People have backlogs full of stuff they need to play. If you have to juggle either feeding you and your family over Doom Guy's latest adventure, most people will make the tough but right call. But remember, they did this exact PR spin pretty much to a T just mere months ago with Assassin's Creed Shadows. Here's an article from what Shadows released by Games Radar. Assassin's Creed Shadows shoots past 3 million players and 40 million hours played with the second highest day one sales revenue in Assassin's Creed franchise history. Oh boy, sounds amazing. And yet the story surrounding Shadows was spun and spun until they were dizzy, jumping through all the hoops and backflipping to avoid any potential whataboutisms or any proof to contradict their opinions. Shadows was touted by all the usual suspects as this massive success story that owned the chuds. Wow, it reached 3 million players. Gee, I wonder where we heard that one before. Yet despite all of this, after a mere month or so of slobbering on Shadows Schmeat, the industry then began posting stories like this one titled Assassin's Creed No Savior for Struggling Ubisoft. A bumper release for the latest Assassin's Creed installment did not save French video game giant Ubisoft from falling back into the red in its 2024-25 financial year. But you guys just said like a month or so ago that the game was a big success. It reached 3 million players and it had all of these super high revenue things. What do you mean it didn't save Ubisoft? IGN said Shadows did amazing for Ubisoft. I gotta believe them, right? But it didn't do amazing, did it? Because those 3 million players of Shadows, just like Doom the Dark Ages, were largely inflated by people who didn't buy the game at full price but played Shadows via Ubisoft Plus, which is basically Game Pass, but you know, with Ubisoft games. And this is what I mean, guys. The budgets are so out of whack across the board that the plates need to be spinning 24/7 in order to make them seem better than they actually are. Maybe Dark Ages didn't cost as much money to make as Eternal did, but frankly, I doubt that. id Software had to add entirely new gameplay gameplay systems like the dragon flying and the big mech fights, and they clearly, if you played it, they spent no expense on the visuals and the flair of the game. Plus, Dark Ages has the most cutscenes out of any modern Doom game, as it tells a more cohesive story than the previous two games, which, depending on what you're looking for, this is either a positive or a really big negative. Because especially after just recently replaying Doom 2016, that game is almost completely cutscene free outside of a very few circumstances where that happens. And many times actually through Doom 2016's campaign, Doom Guy is shown punching terminals and monitors into pieces because he can't be bothered to listen to whoever's talking and telling him things. There's one part of the game where Samuel Hayden tells Doom Guy not to break something because it's so important, and Doom Guy instead just breaks it because he wants Samuel to stop talking so he can get back to blasting demons in the face. And honestly, I respect that. I loved the tone of Doom 2016 because it was a rejection of the exposition heavy cutscene games of its time. It just wanted to be a video game where you got to shoot demons and have fun, and Dark Ages kind of represses that somewhat, and the environments are also much bigger than that of Doom 2016 or even Eternals. And with me replaying the 2016 one, I actually prefer its level design over that of Dark Ages because it feels more refined and snappy and intricate, whereas Dark Ages level design is just very wide. Again, not in a bad way or anything, but it is what it is. Also, look here at the Steam chart numbers. Dark Ages is sitting at barely 13,000 concurrent players on Steam, and that's a mere week after launch. Yeah, I know, I can already hear people, but it's a single player game. Okay, true enough, but this is your big budget AAA Doom game, and it couldn't even reach Veilguard numbers? Why? The answer I'm seeing online across tweets and more are people are finally starting to wake up to the idea that maybe Game Pass does indeed cannibalize sales for most games. And look, I just want to say that those people are pretty much right in their assessments, because outside of very few rare instances like Clair Obscur or Oblivion, most if not all the other games did not perform well outside of Game Pass. Besides Dark Ages, even Avowed did even worse. Look at its Steam charts on screen here. It couldn't even surpass 20,000 in its debut week and now has less than 400 people playing it. And recently too, as seen here, Avowed's director has already left Obsidian for Netflix games. Kerry Patel, who worked at Obsidian for something like 12 years, is now gone. There's no news on DLC or anything else for Avowed. And yet, just like Dark Ages, Avowed was spun with a similar story too, as you can see here as it reads. Avowed has reached 5.9 million players since launch, outperforming one of Xbox's hit first-party titles. So Avowed reached even more players than Dark Ages, yet again, if you look at what it peaked on Steam, where people had to actually buy the game, the numbers spoke for themselves. And here's more concerning news showing that these Xbox games may not be having the staying power that they would hope for. Dark Ages is about a week old now as of this video going live, right? Where is it sitting on Steam right now when it comes to paying customers buying the game? Maybe 5th place, 10th, 15th? No, look here. Dark Ages is sitting at 113 on the bestsellers list less than a week after its official launch. Again, I don't share this as some gotcha to go, look, it's doing bad, isn't that great? No, not at all. This is bad, guys. I would have hoped that Dark Ages would have been in the top 10 still, maybe top 20 at least. It's only been a week. It's a Doom game. Frankly, the performance of this game is kind of making the case a reality that a lot of these Game Pass games that are also first-party Xbox titles are not doing what Microsoft might want them to do. And it's why I keep saying that Game Pass truly is not good for video game companies or studios at all. The money made from it is just not sustainable. Game Pass peaked years ago and its player counts already too. And one of the ways that Microsoft might be tackling this in the future, as seen here from Screen Rant, is that Microsoft, if you can believe it, could be adding a free tier option to Game Pass in the future. And no, I'm not kidding. The goal for Microsoft in 2025, by the way, is to hit 50 million Game Pass subscribers. It hasn't happened yet, obviously, but you hear free and you're probably thinking, wait, how could that even work? Well, it's bleak, but let me tell you. The idea here, and this all ties to Dark Ages and Avowed and Halo and Gears and more, since, Microsoft owns all of those now too, is that Microsoft would implement a version of Game Pass where players would log in and get to play any of their games, including Dark Ages, for absolutely free. The catch would be that after a certain amount of game time is accumulated, your game would pretty much just stop. And no, I'm not kidding. And then you would just be forced to watch an ad break, kind of like a YouTube video and then some, which is insane to me, dude. Because imagine playing Dark Ages, you're ripping and tearing, and right before you shoot a demon and hurl your shield at it, the game just stops and then it cuts to like a McDonald's ad for a full-blown minute, then it shifts back and then you play. Or it could be a cutscene playing and something dramatic is happening on screen and now there's a car commercial on screen just killing your immersion. Never mind the player's time and gameplay being interrupted, what would this even mean for game budgets and more going forward? Sure, I guess if this free tier existed, you would see massively inflated numbers of players in the future. The the next Doom game could say, oh wow, we hit 20 million players in 1 week. But the actual reality would be that 19.5 million of those were free users who didn't actually spend a single dime and instead had to watch like 50 ad breaks before they hit the credits playing that game. And how dystopian would that be to witness? This would just usher in the crushing reality of you going to go watch an ad for every single multiplayer match that you would play in a game going forward. Call of Duty is going to be showing you ads for Nike or Adidas every single time you load into Nuketown now. And let's say that this happens, all right? What then? How will this affect the quality and the quantity of these games going forward? You ask me, this would completely destabilize and ruin modern gaming as a whole, and I'm not even kidding, because everything would just be reduced to what mobile games pretty much are just doing right now, but actually even worse, where every game is no longer going to be designed to tell a story. Voice actors won't really matter, they'll just use AI anyway, and gameplay loops will be designed to incorporate the ads in between battles on purpose, and you can bet your ass there'll be tons of more microtransactions too if this becomes a reality. How will then like a game like Doom in the future work? Every room that you rip and tear then leads to an ad break before you can continue? What the hell are we even doing anymore at that point? I'd have to watch an ad break in a video game. I'm going to become the Joker is what's going to happen. We're already reaching the point of mass market spending and bloated budgets across the board when it comes to these sorts of games. Dark Ages is already being inflated by Microsoft with suspiciously worded coded language to spin that story. And now you're telling me they could make Game Pass free to play eventually? What would that even mean for like PlayStation, Nintendo, or Steam? How would they even compete? It would just be a battle to the bottom where quality would be completely sacrificed for quantity instead. If gaming became this, I would genuinely just stop playing video games made in current times anymore. I would just regress and play older games, and that's pretty much it, because there's no way in hell I would ever support something like this. And now I gotta worry about not just the propaganda in my games, but now I got ads and more? No way, dude. No thanks. The way that Dark Ages has been going is proof that this industry needs a complete reset, man. If a game where Doom Guy rides dragons and shoots demons with shotguns needs inflated Game Pass numbers to justify its own existence, what are we even doing? At least some websites are telling it how it is. Look at 80level.com here. In their subline, they say, Bethesda boasted that Dark Ages hit 3 million players 7 times faster than Doom Eternal, forgetting that Xbox Game Pass exists. And here's what 80level said. The publisher's 7 times faster claim has also been scrutinized, with some emphasizing that this comparison is blatantly unfair and is only meant to make the Dark Ages look good, given that the new game was available on Game Pass day 1, while Doom Eternal arrived there only on October 1st, 2020, 6 months after its launch. All factors combined, the publisher's hesitation to reveal actual sales numbers, the Dark Ages' absolutely atrocious performance on Steam, the 7 times faster claim, and the game's ridiculous $80 price tag in Europe led me to believe that while the game is still good and 3 million people did indeed play it, a large portion of those players accessed the game via Game Pass for as little as $12 a month, instead of paying full price, which could ultimately hurt both id Software and Bethesda revenue-wise. Look, I could keep going. I could keep bringing up more examples and articles, but I think we all get the point, right? This is not good for the industry. Budgets are clearly overblown. These companies are now resorting to selective coded wording to sound better than they actually are. And beyond this, the fact they're looking at free-to-play for Game Pass revenue ideas could be utterly disastrous for an industry that is also trying to justify now $80 to $90 games in the future when people are so obviously not going to be willing to pay that for anything besides maybe Grand Theft Auto 6. It just feels hollow, you know? I like Dark Ages, I wish it the best, but this is like seeing a relic being released in modern times, and I'm really worried about what this could mean for the future of all games. I want more games like Dark Ages in the future, not less. But when they need to resort to stuff like this to sound successful, what hope is there? Where do we go from here, and how do we fix it? Let me know what you would do in the comments. Thanks for being here and for watching. Subscribe, enjoy your day, and I'll see you soon.